You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Medieval people imagined that somewhere far away there really was mystical monsters. For example, geographers of Western Europe believed that in the east is a huge territory called the Great Tartar. It is probably there that the River of the Dead originates, and the inhabitants of this country once announced to the whole world about the coming of the end of the world. Where was this mystical land? The Great Tartary is a geographical term used mainly by Western European scholars from the 12th to 19th century. They place this state in various parts of Asia, from the Urals and Siberia to Mongolia and China. The borders of Tartary were moving from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Other scientists, on the contrary, associate this mysterious country with Turkestan or Mongolia. The origin of Tartary scientists connect with the contamination of two terms at once: ancient Greek Tartarus and the name of the people Tartars. It is believed that the words united in the minds of the inhabitants of Western Europe because of the similarity in sound. The fact is that from the caravans who transported goods from China along the Great Silk Road, the Europeans heard about this mysterious Tartars inhabiting the eastern lands. Since the Chinese, almost all people living in north of the Celestial Empire, including Mongols and Yakuts, that were called Tartars. In the west, a notion was formed that Tartary is a huge power that occupies almost all of Asia. In the 13th century, after the raids of the Mongolians, the attitudes towards the Tartars became negative. They began to be perceived as horrific warriors from the east, the hordes of which want to put an end to the existence of Christian civilization. In the religious texts, it was said that the Tartars are savages, ferocious like demons, sent by Satan himself. In addition, according to the ancient Greek mythology, Tartarus is in an abyss that is under the kingdom of Hades, the world of the dead. Because of the similarity of the Tartars with the name of the pagan hell in Western Europe, the opinion was formed that the Great Tartary is a land where different monsters, including the legendary Gog and Magog, live, and people there worship the Antichrist. Many scientists from Western Europe consider Great Tartary a huge empire stretching from the Urals to the Pacific Ocean. For example, an Italian diplomat in his work Universal Relation, dated 1595, wrote that this country used to be called Scythia, and it occupies half of Asia. However, not all scholars were inclined to give the Great Tartary such vast expanses. Some geographers had this country in Central Asia. Thus, the Encyclopaedia Britannica, Volume 3, 1773, indicates that the state of Tartar is south of Siberia, north of India and Persia, and west of China. This view was also shared by a Swedish researcher. In 1730, he published Geographical Description of the Great Tartary, places the state between Mongolia, Siberia and the Caspian Sea. A number of scientists directly associate Tartary with the birthplace of Genghis Khan. The Italian diplomat who visited Mongolia in 1246 left a bizarre description of this country in his work The History of the Mongols, which we call the Tartars. He combined his travel experiences with medieval mystic legends. For example, the author mentioned firecrackers, people with dog heads and cow hooves, and as well as creatures whose legs do not have joints. Some researchers have mentioned in their works that in a huge empire it's so cold that ice is already shallow under the earth. It was from here, as the French traveller of Hungarian descent Franz Tott believed that the cradle of humanity, in his memoirs on Turks and Tartars, 1784, he wrote that the earliest people migrated from Tartarus to the south and west, populating China, Tibet, India, and later Europe. Many Catholic scholars regarded the border between Europe and Asia as a mythical frontier of good and evil. For example, the English explorer John Speed in 1626 presented to the scientific community the new chart of Tartary, compiled by him. In the publication there was an image of the typical resident of this country. He was wearing clothes worn under Ivan the Terrible. Tartarus was associated with the world of the dead, or a country ruled by evil forces. Although on the very first Russian maps you can find this state, which is explained by the influence of the Western European traditions. Thus Tartary got on the draft of Siberia, which was compiled in 1667. I have read a lot about this land, Grand Tartary, that existed for a very long period, and the final civil war between the Moscovian Tartary and Western European parts of it. Parts of it happened in 1775 and is known as Pugachevs. So we have a great amount of talk about Great Tartary. It is said it existed for thousands of years until it was destroyed and wiped out from the histories. Remember what Napoleon said, history is a lie, everybody agreed upon. Why would he say such a thing if he did not know it was a simple, nasty fact? So have Russians shared the same territory with Mongols? Yes, and the Mongols also were absorbed into the Russian culture, hence why today many people in Russia look Mongol, because that's part of their ancestry. So Tartary existed, but it was at the same time shared by the Russian Empire. More precisely, this empire just conquered over the lands of the Tartars. So was Tartary, was it under Russia? Like the hollow earth theory, was this mirrored on the other side of the earth? Or was this just underneath, like a cavern system? Or was it on the surface and just wiped from history?